The 100 yards of football. Today we got a very special. It's about the NFL draft history. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. Join me today is a young man who can probably help me describe what it means to be a first round pick in the history of the NFL draft, what it felt like being a young man, coming out of Florida State University, when he got that phone call from the Atlanta Falcons, 25th selection overall, 1981 draft, smiling, all the ladies calling him from nowhere, car dealerships, everybody. He's the man on the campus. Mr. Bobby Butler is going to help me break down the NFL draft history. First round pick in the 1981 draft, 25th selection by way of the Atlanta Falcons out of Florida State University. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. It's something we're doing special here at 100 Yards Football. We love talking football, and basically we love the draft. If you've been following our videos, we've been highlighting the top 20 prospects in this year's draft. So I'm going to start the NFL draft history and go back to my time. The history of the NFL draft has always been something exciting to me. When I was about 6 years old in a town of Memphis, Tennessee, the 901, I remember my father had this color television. And I remember watching some players that went first overall in the draft. And the first game I saw was Michigan State taking on Notre Dame. And some of them guys that went the next year in the draft, the next few years, really kind of got me liking this game. Bubba Smith. Remember him out of Beaumont, Texas, who went first round. Alan Page, who became a great tackle with the Minnesota Vikings. But when I really turned the heat up and really started following the draft was around the time of 1966 to 1968. I'm 6 years old, Brother Butler. But the reason I started following it, because back in the day, my dad used to be a big HBCU fan. That's right. And his schools were Jackson State and Tennessee State. And I had an aunt that attended Tennessee State, the great Aunt Jean. She's not with us no more, but she had attended there. And I remember going watching Tennessee State play, and I remember that 66 team, who I still consider the greatest football team ever on any level. They had like 28 to 30 players drafted in the next 4 years in the draft. Names like Eldrin Dickey, Nolan Smith. Can you feel me? Claude Humphrey, who's a great Hall of Famer. Bill Tucker, King Dunlap. Remember his son played at Auburn. Some fantastic players, man. And that team went 12-0, and that's when I started really following the draft. Then down through the years, I remember when Randy White went first round. Then I remember when that man out of Galileo High School, by way, junior college, went to USC. I know a lot of people don't like him. O.J. Simpson. I remember when he went first overall in 1969. And then Sweetness, Columbia, Mississippi Finest, Mr. Walter Payton. Then I'm going to go a step over. When I came out of college in 82, the great man out of Lincoln High School, by the way, San Diego, California, Marcus Allen. Then your draft, who I consider the greatest draft, one of the greatest drafts ever, 81 draft. A lot of people should give multiple respect to this draft. George Rogers, Lawrence Taylor, Ronnie Lott, Dennis Smith, the Eyes, Mike Singletary out of Baylor University. I'm going to let you take over and talk a little bit about the draft because you got drafted. I didn't. But that's what I liked about the draft. And I became a fan since that time. And that's what I'm talking about today at 59 years old.
Well, I tell you, it's a fun time. I'll never forget that moment for me, right? So when you go to college, you're in high school, you're playing ball. There were a couple guys playing the NFL from my hometown. Barry Hill went to Iowa, right? Free safety, played with the Dolphins. Charles Cornelius, who played cornerback at Bethune-Cookman, HBCU, go Wildcats. And he played 8 years in the league. And so I was the next guy out of Delray. And so when it happened for me, it was a different era. In 1981, the 81 draft was totally different from today. So here's how I went through the draft. First of all, let's back up. There was no NFL combine. All right, we had no NFL combine, the things that we got a chance to see a couple weeks ago.
Now, I got a question. So, by y'all not having a combine, how did they really kind of grade y'all? They came out and gave y'all individual workouts at the time?
Well, here's what they did.
Back then?
Back then, the scouts would come to the school. Okay. And they would work you out. They run you 40. All the drills that you see at the combine, you'll do them at your school, right? And then they'll take the top 100 players, and there was like 4 different locations that they would send us. And so I get a chance to meet all the guys who I competed against in college and became friends with them, guys who were going to be in the 81 draft. So we went to Dallas, and so many teams would be represented in Dallas. Then we went to Tampa. So many teams would be represented in Tampa. Went to New York, which is a big city. You know, first time I ever went to New York was there, and so many guys would be there. And we got to know each other. And what they would do at those places was just talk to us and give us the questions, right? You know, those dreaded questions that they give you, right?
What were some of the questions? If I can ask in our audience, I mean, was it like the Wonderlic as they do now? Was it
Well,
similar?
we had the Wonderlic.
Was there some crazy questions that I
Oh, my
hear
God.
about the Wonderlic be asking questions?
Well, they're crazy questions. I mean, if you want a chemist, if you want a guy who's going to the moon and back, give him the Wonderlic test.
Yes, sir.
But if you want football players, you know, just make sure they can count to 10.
So it wasn't none equivalent to football.
It wasn't none equivalent to football. And so what they did, though, they would take our measurements, they'd take our size, right? They'd put us in a room, butt naked, to look at your manhood, right?
Yeah,
Things like that, right?
Yes, sir.
To see what kind of pedigree they getting, right? And so they did do those things.
Yes, sir.
But what happened, though, I bonded.
Watch it now, brother Butler.
I bonded and I made
female.
friends.
We got a lot of female friends. You know what I'm saying? Okay, go
I
ahead,
bonded and made friends with all those great players that we talked about in
Yes,
the
sir.
81 draft. And then draft day was kind of funny because back then, my experience with my teammates at Florida State, they'll come in and say, well, I'm projected to go in this round. And then when the draft come, they wouldn't go in that round. And they'd get their feelings hurt, and they'd be all sad and crying, and, you know, the sky's falling. And so I used to watch that year in, year out. I'm watching that, and I go, you know what? I'm not going for the okie doke, right? So what I did, I said to myself, because, you know, you always make goals for yourself. Everybody want to be a first rounder.
Absolutely.
But what I said to myself, if I can just go in the top 3 rounds. Now, I know I had put the work in. You know, I played well. Every time I played against a great receiver, I shut him down. Every time I played against a great running team, like in the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma,
Yes, sir, man.
against Billy Sims, against
J.C.
David Overstreet,
Watts.
against J.C. Watts, I showed up and showed out. And so just like you
remember
always say,
I remember those games because I watched them with my father.
with your father. So
Yes,
just
sir.
like you always say, how do players play in the big games? Well, every time I had a big game, I showed up, right? And so even at 155 pounds, it was good enough to get me drafted in the first round. But what I did, I had a goal of just getting drafted in the top 3. My agent kept telling me, you're going first round. I'm like, I ain't listening to it. The mock draft had the Falcons taking me in the first round. I wouldn't even believe it, right? I said, I don't want to get my feelings hurt. Well, the day of the draft, I get up. It started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my goal was to sleep through the draft. I didn't want to be up to the first round. I wanted to sleep through the first round. But you and I both know how long the first round takes.
Absolutely.
It takes forever. And so I got up, and I started watching the draft. And then I got a phone call, right? And it was my buddies calling me, and, oh, this is so-and-so with the Bengals. I'm like, man, get off the phone, right? And so they would call and fake like they're a team and stuff like that. And so then all of a sudden I got a real phone call from the Dallas Cowboys. Now my dream was to play for the Dallas Cowboys, right? And I got that call from Gil Brandt, and I was so excited. And then about 5 minutes later, I get the phone call from the Falcons.
So the Falcons took you before Dallas picked.
Falcons had the pick right before Dallas.
Man.
Dallas had the 26th pick. The Falcons had the 25th pick. And the Falcons called me. Eddie LeBaron called me and said, if you're there, we're going to take you. And so as I'm watching it, the Falcons come up to the board. And they say the 25th pick in the first round of the 1981 NFL draft, we take Bobby Butler out of Florida State University, right? And so my wife, who was my fiance at the time,
Yes,
she's
sir.
screaming and hollering. I had one reporter in the apartment. They're all excited, and I'm sitting there not that excited. And she go, what's wrong with you? I said, well, they called me 10 minutes ago. I already knew I was going. And so what happened after that point, they put me on a plane. And I was in Atlanta before 1 o'clock that same day in the
Yes, sir.
afternoon. And I had a press conference. I went to the Falcon Complex at the time, was in Swanee, Georgia. And I got a chance to pick up my jersey number. I couldn't get number 21. I was 21 in college. And so I ended up getting 23.
But somebody else had the number when you got it?
The great Lynn Kane.
Oh, okay.
Out
The
of-
running
out
back
of-
out of USC.
Yes.
Okay.
He had 21, and I couldn't pay him for it. He wouldn't take no amount of money for number 21. So I ended up with 23. And then I had a press conference, held the jersey up, had a press conference with Lehman Bennett, who was the head coach at the time, met everybody in the organization, the whole staff, and the next day flew back to Tallahassee. When I got back to Tallahassee, got to the apartment, and I had all these people there waiting on me, car dealerships waiting on me with cars, with keys, drive this car for a couple of days, when you come back, we'll give you this one. You know, all my friends coming to congratulate me, which was a real good thing, because, you know, when you go through the 4 years, when you go through with your friends and your teammates, I mean, the work that you put in, it's blood, sweat, and tears, man. I'm talking about literally blood, sweat, and tears.
Because a lot of people don't know this about Brother Butler. As he tell y'all a story today, he is the guy. I don't hear about Deion Sanders, his class. I don't want to hear about nobody else. This gentleman right here started the legacy of Florida State. He came in and set the table, and that's the bottom line. You know what I'm saying? You look at Florida State, and everybody want to say Deion Sanders, and I get that. Leroy Butler, I get that. Peter Work, I get that. But when you look at the seminars and how they started this program back in the late 70s, the early 80s, it was this young man here, Bobby Butler, Rick Stockstill, who's other guys that played with you, the wrestler, I can't think, Ron Simmons. Them the guys that started what we seeing right now at Florida State. And, man, it's just a pleasure for you to sit here and talk about the draft today with me, because it gives me goosebumps, and go back to your story, because I remember you. I used to come home from the University of Arkansas doing Christmas break, and I remember the 2 years you played back-to-back in the Orange Bowl against that Oklahoma team that was loaded.
They were loaded.
But most of all, I just like the tenacity, the character, that at the time, a lot of people didn't know about Florida State.
Absolutely.
They thought y'all was the small sisters on the block.
Right, exactly.
But, man, after them 2 Orange Bowls, y'all made people start doing this. Quiet. And most of all, Brother Butler played against one of my best friends that I was in the first grade with, Jerry Knowlton, who played at Memphis State. Yes. And it was how Brother Butler shut him down. I don't think Mr. Knowlton had maybe any receptions during a career during the time Memphis State played Florida State. But one major question before we end the video today. When you look at the system now, how they do a draft, and I call it the social media era, do you think they put too much emphasis on the 40-yard dash, the vertical leap? Because back in the day, when you came through like I did from the late 70s to early 80s, they were getting football players. And it didn't matter what you ran, what you benched. You got real football players. And one of the most realest football players that I ever seen, I think he's the greatest defensive player ever, out of Williamsburg, Virginia. Didn't lift no weights. I saw him lift 330-pound linemen off the ground. I consider him the greatest New York Giant ever. I don't care what nobody say, Lawrence Taylor. And Lawrence Taylor wasn't no numbers guy. He was a football player.
He's a football player. Well,
so what do you think about now?
I agree with that, right? And so we sit down and we evaluate these kids, and they go to a combine, right? And some of these guys are not going to do well on tape. They're not going to do well on a clock, right? But they are football players. I like to judge a man by the heart, right? And so how can I judge his heart? In football games, against great talent. You know, he may not run that fast. You know, you look at Jerry Rice's work, right? 4.6 best on the clock. I've only seen one guy catch him in the game. That was Deion Sanders. The only guy. Nobody else could catch him. I ran 4.3. He ran a 4.6. But in that football uniform, he was running 4.3. He was getting it. And so you cannot measure a player's heart, his ability, with a clock. And so I think we do put too much emphasis on that. You know, and some of these kids go to the combine and they're pushing. If I'm not ready to run a 40, I won't run a 40. I won't run it, especially if I'm not ready at the combine, because when that information goes out, it's with you. It sticks with you like glue. It's not going anywhere, right? And so I'll give myself some more time and wait for my pro day and put up a 40 time, right? And so you see the best guys do that because they're not moved by what some management got to say, like Mr. Young, about participating in the 40 in the combine. He didn't run. Now he'll participate in his pro day. But why? If you run a 5 flat, is that going to make him a worse football player? Absolutely not. The guy can ball. He can flat out ball. And so they put too much emphasis on things like that. It's just like I always talk about Evander Holyfield. I always say Evander Holyfield is the best heavyweight of all time. And the reason I say that is because Ali said he was the greatest because he won the belt 3 times. Well, Evander won it 4 times. And so if that's the criteria, Evander Holyfield is the best heavyweight of all time. But the whole time he was fighting, he was knocking out every heavyweight in his era. And the commentators would say, but he's not a heavyweight. He's a cruiserweight. But he's knocking everybody out. What do we need to prove other than that he's got the belts, he's knocking them out, he's got one so frustrated who people felt the best of their time, he bit his ear off.
Mm-hmm. Mike Tyson.
And so why do we use that? Why don't we see how they play the game,
Yes, sir.
which is the most important part, right? And then make our draft choices, right?
That being said, as we in this video today, it's going to be the 2020 NFL Draft. Right now, to make this long, short, and sweet to our listeners out there, and to all the people that watch our video on a weekly basis, we want to say thank you for your support. Brother Butler, right now, in this 2020 NFL Draft, what player would you take number 1 overall if you had to start a team right now?
If I had to start a team right now?
Right now, off the top of your head, who you taking?
Well, you know, I'm taking that one. That one, and, you know, nobody's going to take him number 1, but I'm going to take him. Clemson University, number 11, the freak of the week, the super freak, Mr. Isaiah Simmons.
Rick James of football.
Rick James of football.
That being said, thank you for watching the video today. We appreciate your support and time. And it's been a great, great time here today talking about the NFL draft history. If you like,
What's your pick?
my pick?
Yeah.
Okay, if I had to take number 1, a best player overall, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to go very shortly. I like receivers. I'm a defensive man, but I like receivers. This is a receiver draft. I'm taking Jerry Jeudy from his state of Florida. I like his size. I like his height. And, man, he picks it up and go. And I think when it's all said and done, he comes out of the program, as you mentioned earlier in one of our videos, they get it down there in Alabama. I think Jerry Jeudy is the best player in the draft.
Awesome.
And that being said, Isaiah Simmons for Mr. Butler, Jerry Jeudy for me, the 2020 NFL Draft. Hey, that's us. We'd like to say thank you for watching our video today. Please comment and share it. To all the people who support the video, God bless. To my father, get well. To Kevin the Bull Jones, man, we're waiting on you. Hopefully that you feel better next week.
Let's go, dude.